Rain poured heavily from the dark sky as thunder cracked like a warning. In the middle of the night, Zenil stood in the cold, wet streets of Aba, Nigeria. Her dress clung to her skin, soaked from the storm. Her feet were bare, trembling on the rough pavement. She had no phone, no bag, nothing, only tears mixing with the rain on her face. Moments earlier, her husband, Sibusiso, had screamed at her, his eyes full of rage. All she had done was ask where he had spent the night. Instead of answering, he had dragged her outside and slammed the door shut, leaving her alone under the stormy sky. Cars passed without stopping. She tried to cover herself with her arms, shaking from both cold and shame. People looked, but no one helped. Her heart pounded with fear and confusion. How could the man she loved so much, the man she cooked and cared for, throw her out like trash? Her mind was spinning. She didn't even know where to go. Her world, her marriage, her trust. Everything had broken in a single moment. The thunder rolled again, loud and angry, like it too was hurt. She stood there, helpless and wet, as the rain kept falling and the night got colder. But deep inside her chest, though small and quiet, a tiny spark of strength refused to die. She didn't know it yet, but that night in the rain was the end of her pain, and the beginning of her rise. The rain kept falling hard as Zenil stood frozen in the street, soaked to the bone, her hair stuck to her face, her body shivering. Her bare feet were cut from the rough ground, her dress heavy with water. Every car that passed splashed water near her, but no one stopped. No one cared. Her eyes were blurry from tears and rain, and her body felt weak, ready to collapse. Just when she thought she couldn't take another step, a black luxury SUV slowed down beside her. It was the first car that noticed her. The engine purred softly as it came to a stop. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a dark, expensive suit. He held a large umbrella over her head, his face calm but full of concern. He didn't ask who she was or why she was standing there like that. He simply said, "Come, please." His voice was kind, firm but gentle. Zenil looked up, her lips trembling, unable to speak. The man took off his coat and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. His hands were warm, steady. Slowly, he helped her into the car, careful not to hurt her. The seat was soft, the car warm, the smell clean like leather and fresh air. The moment her body touched the seat, her head dropped to the side. Everything went black. She had fainted from cold, hunger, and pain. The man, Kwabena, didn't panic. He looked at her for a long second, then told the driver calmly, "Let's go to the guest house. She needs rest." He didn't care about the mess her wet clothes made in the car. He didn't ask questions. Not who she was, not what happened, not why she was barefoot in the rain. He just knew she needed help. He placed the umbrella beside her feet and sat quietly, watching the rain hit the windows as the car drove away. The city lights blurred outside, and all around them, the world kept moving. But inside that car, time slowed down. It was quiet, calm, almost like the storm had stayed behind them. When they reached the guest house, Kwabena carried her inside. The staff rushed over, confused, but he said, "Give her food. Warm water. Clean clothes." Still, no questions. He watched from a distance as they laid her on the couch and covered her with a blanket. She didn't wake up for hours. When she finally opened her eyes, the rain had stopped. The air was warm. She was dry. She didn't know where she was, but for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt safe. Kwabena walked in with a soft smile, holding a bowl of soup. "Eat," he said. Zenil stared at him, still weak, still confused. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. He sat down and simply said, "Because someone should have." Zenil stayed at Kwabena's guest house for days. At first, she barely spoke. She slept a lot. She ate slowly. Sometimes she stared at the wall for hours, lost in thought. Other times, she cried without warning. The pain she had hidden for years was now pouring out of her, one tear at a time. Kwabena didn't push her. He let her rest. He made sure she had warm food, clean clothes, and quiet. No loud questions, no pressure. Just kindness. Slowly, she began to open up. One evening, sitting by the window with the sun setting behind her, she began to talk. Her voice was soft, her hands shaking, but the words came out like a river. She told him everything, about her life, her dreams, her broken marriage, the way Sibusiso had changed over time, and how she lost herself trying to hold the pieces together. Kwabena listened the whole time without interrupting. When she was done, she looked at him, expecting pity or judgment. But he just said, "You were never the weak one. You were just the one who loved too much." Zeniel's eyes filled again, but this time, the tears felt different. Not from pain, but from feeling seen, really seen. The next morning, Kwabena handed her a folder. "This is my company. Logistics. We move goods across countries. Fast, clean, reliable. I need someone I can trust. Someone smart. Someone with fire." Zeniel looked at him, confused. "Me?" she asked. He nodded. "You know how to fight. You know how to think on your feet. That's what this business needs." She was quiet for a long time. Her hands held the folder tightly, her mind full of doubts. What if she failed? What if people laughed at her? She didn't have a business degree. She didn't even know where to begin. But then she remembered the night she stood barefoot in the rain, with nothing but her broken heart, and how she had survived that. If she could survive that, maybe she could do anything. She looked up at Kwabena and gave a small, brave nod. "Yes," she said. "I'll try." He smiled. Not a big smile, but the kind that shows real belief. "That's all I ask." From that day, Zeniel started learning everything: how to read contracts, how to manage routes, how to deal with clients and suppliers. Kwabena taught her, trusted her, and challenged her. She worked hard, stayed up late, made mistakes, but never gave up. And every time doubt crept in, she remembered his words, "You were never the weak one." Something inside her had changed. She was no longer just healing. She was building. 3 years later, everything about Zeniel had changed. She now walked with confidence, her head held high, her voice strong and clear. She wore silk suits that fit her like they were made just for her. Her heels clicked proudly on marble floors in offices across Africa, Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, Johannesburg. Zeniel was no longer the woman crying in the rain. She was the chief operating officer of one of the fastest-growing supply chain companies in Africa. Trucks moved when she gave the word. Ships waited for her approval. Big brands lined up to work with her. She flew first class, stayed in 5-star hotels, and sat across from powerful men in boardrooms who listened carefully when she spoke. Her name was now respected in the world of business. People called her ma'am, stood when she entered, and waited for her decisions. But Zeniel never forgot. Every time she saw a woman sitting quietly in a corner during meetings, unsure whether to speak up, she remembered who she used to be. She would often offer that woman a smile or ask, "What do you think?" Because she knew what it felt like to be invisible. Her success wasn't just built on profit and strategy, it was built on pain, survival, and the fire that never left her heart. Behind the power, there was a story. Behind the fancy clothes and flashing cameras, there was a journey. But most people didn't know it. They only saw the strong, elegant woman who seemed born to lead. No one remembered the barefoot girl standing in the rain, broken and lost. No one knew how she once slept on a guesthouse couch, crying into a borrowed blanket. And Zeniel didn't try to remind them. She didn't need to. Her presence spoke louder than her past. She kept her circle small. Kwabena was still by her side, not as her savior, but as her partner, her equal, and her quiet strength. He never took credit. He never needed to. He simply stood beside her in every room, proud and steady. Together, they built something powerful. Something that stretched across borders and broke every limit. Sometimes, late at night, when the emails were done and the office lights were off, Zeniel would stand by her window, looking at the city lights below. She would sip her tea, close her eyes, and whisper a thank you to the girl she used to be. That girl didn't give up. That girl held on, even when no one else did. And because of her, this woman, the woman behind the empire, was finally free. Sibusiso sat at his office desk, tapping his pen against the table, staring at the figures on his laptop screen. The numbers didn't lie, his company was bleeding money. Deliveries were late. Clients were angry. Partners were pulling out one by one. He tried calling his usual logistics team, but they were suddenly unavailable. Others gave him polite excuses. Some didn't even pick up. The same sentence kept echoing through his ears: "We can't work with you anymore. Zeniel Holdings controls that route now." At first, he thought he misheard. Zeniel? The same woman he threw out into the rain 3 years ago. It had to be a mistake. But then he heard it again. And again. And again. He searched her name online, hands shaking slightly. There she was, Zeniel Moyo, COO of a multi-country supply chain empire. Her photos filled the screen. One showed her stepping off a private jet. Another at a business summit, shaking hands with African presidents. She looked like royalty. Calm. Strong. Powerful. Nothing like the woman he had once screamed at and kicked out into the street. Sibusiso leaned back in his chair, sweat forming on his forehead. His empire was falling, and he couldn't stop it. Every move he made was blocked. Every new deal failed before it started. His business, once strong, was now weak and breaking apart. The banks started calling. Suppliers demanded answers. Investors pulled out quietly. No one wanted to be tied to a man who had become untouchable in the logistics world. And the reason? One woman. One name. Zeniel. He felt something deep in his chest: shame, anger, regret. He remembered that night clearly now. Her standing barefoot in the rain, crying. Her voice shaking as she asked him a simple question. And how he slammed the door without a second thought. Back then, he had laughed. He thought she would disappear, that she had nothing and no one. But now, she had everything. And he had nothing but memories and a falling company. He tried to call someone, anyone, for help. But nobody wanted to risk losing their business with Zeniel Holdings. She wasn't just a name anymore, she was a force. She didn't come for revenge. She didn't need to. Her success was enough. Her silence was louder than any words he could ever say. Sibusiso stood up and walked to the window. The city lights looked blurry through his tired eyes. His office, once full of life, now felt cold and empty. The phones weren't ringing. The emails stopped coming. Everyone had moved on. Everyone, except him. He was stuck in the shadow of the woman he once tried to break. And now, all he could hear, over and over, was her name. Zeniel. 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 Zeniel was in her Lagos office, sitting at the head of a long glass table, leading a meeting with her executive team. She wore a cream-colored suit and spoke with calm authority, pointing at charts and giving clear instructions. Her phone buzzed quietly. It was a call from the building security. She almost ignored it, but something told her to answer. "Ma'am," the voice said, a little unsure, "there's a man downstairs. He says he's your husband. He's crying." For a moment, the room froze around her. Her fingers stopped moving. Her team looked up, confused. She stood slowly, her face unreadable, and walked out of the room without saying a word. In the elevator, her heart beat steady, not fast. She wasn't nervous, she wasn't scared, just curious. She stepped out into the sleek lobby of the high-rise building. The air was cool, the floor shiny like a mirror. And there he was. Sibusiso. The man who once threw her out like she was nothing. Now he was the one on the ground. Kneeling, sweating, shaking. His shirt was wrinkled, stained. His hands were pressed together, like a man in prayer. When he saw her, his eyes widened. He tried to stand but fell back down. "Zeniel, please," he said, his voice cracking. "Please. Just hear me out." Tears mixed with sweat on his face. He looked broken, like someone who had lost everything. And he had. His business, his pride, his power, all gone. All while the woman he once crushed now stood above him, calm and strong. Zeniel didn't say a word. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She just looked at him, really looked. She saw the same man, but not the same strength. His eyes no longer held that sharp pride. They were full of fear now, full of regret. She didn't feel hate. She didn't feel pity. What she felt was peace. The kind of peace that comes when life proves your worth louder than any words ever could. He reached out, his fingers trembling. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I lost everything. I need your help." People in the lobby began to stare. Cameras blinked from the walls. But Zeniel stood tall, untouched by the moment. She looked at him for one long breath, then turned. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need revenge. Her success had already said everything. And just as she turned, another figure stepped forward, Kwabena. Dressed in a dark, sharp suit, holding her tablet and car keys. He stood beside her silently, the way he always did. Together, they walked away, their steps in sync, calm and proud. Sibusiso stayed behind, still on his knees, still sweating, still begging. But no one came to save him. Because the woman he had once broken was no longer the same. She was power now. She was peace. And she walked away without looking back. Zeniel didn't say a single word. She looked at Sibusiso for just a moment, long enough for him to know she saw him, long enough for him to feel her silence. But she didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. Calm, steady, and full of something he never thought she'd have again, power. Then, slowly, she turned around. And right there beside her was Kwabena. Tall, confident, holding her tablet in one hand, his other hand gently resting at her back. He didn't say anything either. He didn't need to. His presence was enough, a quiet reminder of who had helped her rise, not with pity, but with respect. Together, they walked away from the lobby. Their steps were slow, proud, unshaken. The sound of their shoes echoed through the floor like a soft drumbeat. Every eye in the room followed them. People whispered, security watched, even the receptionist stopped typing. Everyone knew they were watching something powerful. The woman once left crying in the rain had become someone no storm could touch. Sibusiso didn't get up. He stayed kneeling, eyes wide, lips slightly open like he wanted to say something, but no words came. He just watched her walk past him, rising from the floor he once believed she'd never escape. Now, she stood higher than he could ever reach. And he knew, in that silent moment, he had lost much more than a wife. He had lost a queen. And she wasn't walking alone anymore.